Making headlines for this week of November the 11th, election fallout, collapse and potential evolution of the United States now on full display for the world to see. Off the mark, financial pundits, like the media, failed in their post-election assessments. Economic makeover, new global financial paradigm essential to saving humanity and the planet. And celestial intervention, burst of galactic cosmic rays from sun indicates a crack in the Earth's magnetic shield, and it may be a good thing.
With news around, upon, within, and beyond our planet, the program making disclosure official. This is Cosmic Vision News. Here is Jeffrey West.
Greetings and blessings to all. So the charade of the U.S. is finally over, and I, for one, am happy about this. The sky has not fallen, the sun rose the next day, and the world continued. Of course, the world is witnessing the fallout now, the deep-rooted division that has existed within the American psychology, but more or less suppressed until now, has been exposed for the world to see, although the world was pretty much aware of this already. There is a lot of anger and resentment, and I am choosing not to focus on that. Rather, I would like to focus on possible reasons for why the outcome happened the way it did, and more importantly, focus on how we move forward in learning the lessons from this and using these lessons to move forward in continuing to change the world in a way that is for the highest good of all, even though there are so many who are not yet able to accept this shift, let alone see it in this one election result. Let's try to make a little bit of sense in the wake of the fallout, positive and negative. The first huge failure outcome of this U.S. election goes to the mainstream media. The mainstream media pretty much had it all wrong right from the beginning, and if nothing else, this should finally prove and show people how corrupt Western media is, and that they have finally outdone themselves in proving once and for all how irrelevant their service is to humanity and the planet. The second outcome was the result itself, and this may take some time before the bigger picture is revealed through this outcome. For now, each of the two main candidates fulfilled their roles in polarizing their respective supporters. This election has served its purpose in revealing the deep divisions that have been covered up and suppressed within the American psychology, an exposure that is now necessary if the country is to move forward into higher vibrations of evolution. Even the candidates of the less successful parties still played a significant role in revealing and addressing the deep-rooted negativity of so many in the country. It is this deep-rooted negativity that the controlling cabal of the U.S. has fed upon and profited from, and now it has been exposed for those within the U.S. to reflect upon as they choose to move forward, or not. It is going to take longer for the deeper lessons to be understood by all those who became so emotionally attached to the outcome that they felt inclined to fall into denser vibrations of negativity, and who are now among the group of people lashing out in protest against President-elect Trump for what they think he represents. There is speculation that election rigging had been taking place for both candidates. What is not so clear is by whom this was done and why. In the case of Clinton, it is a bit more clear, but in the case of Trump, it is less clear and less understandable by most who are unable to see the bigger picture of the meaning for why this vote turned out the way it did. There is perhaps an irony that was revealed in this election cycle. Trump was quoted over 20 years ago as saying that if he were to run for president, he would run as a Republican because Republicans were so stupid, in his words, that he could lie about anything, and people would believe him. In essence, his pre-election rhetoric proved exactly that point. In the process of stating it all publicly, however, what he also pulled out into the light was the denial of this deep-rooted negativity within the American psychology. As a presidential candidate, one might not expect a candidate to say the things Trump said. Yet, he allegedly said them. Rightly or wrongly, he empowered his own base of support, perhaps not so positively, but this remains to be observed. He also exposed the hidden negativity within the Democratic Party. This could be seen in the way the Clinton supporters were immediately rejecting Trump without even knowing what he is going to do. RT reported on November 10th that Google was extremely active during and after the election with people trying to make sense of the surprise outcome. RT likened the election result to the Brexit referendum in the UK a few months back, and this result could be considered a Brexit 2.0. American journalist John Pilger, in an article posted on his homepage, explores how the liberal class enabled the election of Trump. In an excerpt from a video attached to that page, Pilger explains the following.
John, surprised?
No. I think the only people who are surprised are those who enabled it to happen. And I'm speaking about mainly what I would call in the United States a liberal class. To a certain degree in this country, a liberal class. They told us that only the status quo, only a corrupt, warmongering status quo will be acceptable to the majority. They're surprised, will have their hyperventilating and their frustration and their frenzied reaction to this for a long time. They've created Trump in the same way they created Blair, in the same way that others like these people, like the kind of populist that Trump is, in the United States, they corrupted a voting system within the Democratic Party that ensured that another populist, Bernie Sanders, I don't think really he would have beaten Trump, but he was a populist, but instead the corrupt candidate, the embodiment of the status quo that has declared the whole world a battlefield, was the candidate of sanity, the candidate for women. This grotesque campaigning for a candidate for a person who represented great rapacious power has been probably the most eye-opening side to this. I don't think Trump was coming. You could see him coming a mile off, or a Trump.
Of quite how the rest of the world, particularly the global south, views Hillary Clinton like some sort of embodiment of evil. Why?
I don't know how they view her as the embodiment of evil. I mean, she is clearly the embodiment of a corrupt system. She is the embodiment of a very dangerous warmongering system that has declared the world a place where it can go to war wherever it likes, where it can bomb agricultural communities in Yemen where half the children are malnourished, where it can do what it likes in Syria, do what it likes in Iraq. I think most of humanity regards that kind of behavior from the allegedly most powerful country in the world as abhorrent, and she has been the embodiment of that. Now, whether Trump will be is an open question. He says he's anti-establishment, but of course he'll come with his own establishment. He's anti their establishment. I don't believe for a moment that he's anti the wider establishment of the United States. Indeed, he's a product of it. The shock surprise is the same as the Brexit vote. A kind of how dare these people vent their frustrations at the ballot box. The truth is there was no one to vote for in the United States. There was perhaps Sanders earlier on, but he was a minority populist candidate with a large following, yes.
Pilger mentioned that the Democrats helped create the situation that later buried them. It was their rigged voting and corruption within the Democratic Party itself that resulted in Sanders losing to Clinton. Although Pilger seemed to feel that Sanders would have lost to Trump, there are sources suggesting otherwise. Andrew Buncombe, in a November 10th article for the London Independent, reported that Trump would have lost the election had Sanders been the candidate. However, there is still that episode of the TV show The Simpsons from the year 2000, that predicted that Trump would become president. The Simpsons apparently made numerous predictions that would later become true, and a video will be posted in the show summary for this story from Dabu7, who looks at some of the predictions made by this TV show. It suggests quite clearly that there were people in the know who had been given information from the future that certain things would come to pass. Focusing more on the outcome, however, it is worthy to note what did and did not happen leading up to, during, and after the result was officially known. Leading up to the realization of a Trump win, the financial sector went into a dive as the futures markets were clearly rattled about what the outcome was going to mean. It did not last, however. I'll address more of this in the financial news. In the follow-up, Trump received a call from Russian President Vladimir Putin, which was an immediate signal to the world that a thaw and potential reset of U.S.-Russian relations would occur under a Trump administration. This alone could have been the reason why the markets corrected themselves quite quickly against the predictions of numerous business pundits who would end up eating their own words. With more, we have this report from RT.
A few hours ago, President Putin gave his official reaction. Here that is. Russia is ready and willing to restore fully fledged relations with the US. We realise this is going to be a tough task, given how they've deteriorated recently. But we are ready to play our part and do our utmost to put our relations back on track.
Neil McFarquhar, writing for the New York Times on November the 9th, commented on the remarks made by Putin towards Trump and attempted to continue the negativity towards both Trump and Russia by writing the following. Still, there was no mistaking the enthusiasm with which the Kremlin viewed Mr. Trump's ascension, his lack of foreign policy experience, questioning of NATO, open admiration for the Russian leader, and seeming acceptance of Russia's annexation of Crimea all seemed to play into the Kremlin's hands. Prominent analysts gloated about the opportunity this presented for Russia to extend its global influence and possibly shed economic sanctions imposed by the United States and Europe over the events in Crimea and Ukraine. Undoubtedly, they are drinking champagne, and for two reasons. One is political, the other psychological, said Gleb O. Pavlovsky, a political consultant who once worked for the Kremlin. The political reason is that Russia benefits from disarray in the global order, he said, and psychologically, the Kremlin feels more in tune with the anti-establishment view of Trump. Overall, he and others said there is joy that the liberal establishment in the West has suffered another defeat. RT reported on November 9th comments made by former U.S. Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel, writing that one of the priorities for the next U.S. president has to be a real reset with Russia, Hagel said, adding that anti-Russian sentiment in America has reached boiling point and is at its worst level since the Cold War. Global leaders are now finding themselves in the very common and very uncomfortable position of having to change their positions on Donald Trump and extend olive branches, of which there are many. An RT video will be posted in the show summary with more details on this angle. Are there any hints as to what the bigger picture for this election result might be? One possible hint may be found in an article appearing on the 21st Century Wire News website on November the 10th. The article has a video of author David Icke, who shares his insights on what the election reflects.
The outcome of this election mirrors, in terms of, I think, the motivations behind it, what happened with Brexit in the United Kingdom, where, again, there was a massive rejection of the political class and the political establishment, virtually the entirety of which was urging people with threats of dire consequences to stay in the EU. So we are in changing times. And while I don't think for a minute that Donald Trump is going to deliver what so many people thought he was going to deliver, put that aside and look at the reasons for why he attracted so much support. Yes, a significant amount would have been support for Donald Trump because he wasn't Hillary Clinton, and they were only given a choice of the two. A significant part of Clinton's vote, which says an even bigger statement about her, was because she wasn't Donald Trump. It was an extraordinary, almost culmination of this political stitch-up that the motivation of so many was to vote against the person they liked the least. However, it's also an expression of this gathering and ever-gathering rejection of the political establishment, which Trump was perceived to be a vehicle for expressing. Where does it go from here? Well, it depends where Donald Trump goes from here and how much he himself becomes in office just another clone of the political establishment. And I think people are going to be disappointed. Should that happen, that people will go on to the next stage of this awakening. And that's to realize that the political system itself, no matter how you perceive the person you put in office to be, is the problem. The way society is structured, the way it is dictated to by the hidden networks that ultimately control these people, whether they're Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton or whoever else, and that we have to go to the next stage of the awakening to the world and realize that it's not the political system that's going to change anything. It's the vast majority ceasing to cooperate with the actions of the few and the dictates of the few, whether they are one party or the other party, whether they are Clinton or Trump or Bush or Obama or whoever. Because the few, what's called the political class, political establishment, financial class, financial establishment, can only dictate to the vast majority because the vast majority cooperate with the diktats and the laws imposed by the few. When we stop cooperating with laws that are unjust, with laws that are simply designed to take our freedoms away, that are designed to control our lives and what we can do and what we can't do in terms of free choice and free thought. This is the next stage of awakening to how the world works. Not seeing some person as an outsider who's going to come and change everything. This is another significant expression that people have had enough. It's like a primal scream, a cry for help, a scream of frustration that was expressed through this vote for Trump. A scream of frustration at having no one listen to you, having no one think about your interests when they're stitching up the world. And that's a good thing. But there are many stages, I would suggest, of this to go yet. And one of them is that we don't think that any person through the political system is going to change the world for the better, because we have to do that, and we have to do that together.
We get a similar hint from Chris Hedges, who spoke at a political rally in support of Green Party candidate Jill Stein. I will be airing selected excerpts from that speech in this week's Final Words. The link to the speech will also appear in the show summary for this story. In that speech, which also appears on the Truth Dig website, Hedges reaffirmed comments by Ike stating that the rise of Donald Trump is the product of the disenchantment, despair, and anger caused by neoliberalism and the collapse of institutions that once offered a counterweight to the powerful. Trump gives vent to the legitimate rage and betrayal of the white underclass and working poor. There are already positive and negative signs appearing that will determine how Trump enters his presidency. He gave a perhaps surprisingly humble acceptance speech, and he had what reports indicated as being a very positive meeting with President Obama the day after the election. Reports have suggested that he plans to restart various pipeline projects, however, which will no doubt upset many, and especially those water protectors who are standing up at Standing Rock in North Dakota against the pipeline there. An article on the bipartisanreport.com from November 9th has reported that the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, has already announced an apparent massive legal campaign against Trump. Some celebrities have announced that they are planning to leave the U.S., and Hollywood is apparently up in arms about the Trump win. This, actually may be a good thing, however, because it may hint that Trump is against a certain part of Hollywood that has been dealing in child sexual abuse and satanic rituals. Those who are leaving may be fearing that they will be arrested. One good thing reported by Baxter Dimitri on the yournewswire.com website was that Trump is planning on reopening the investigation into the events of 9/11. If true, this alone could open the floodgates of truth connected to so many issues at this time. James Gilliland, known for his support of informing humanity about the existence of our galactic families, and who is the founder of the Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or ESETI, posted an article that appeared on the Rumor Mill News website with his comments of the election. In this article, among other things, Gilliland shares that Trump's campaign brought all the rats out from under the woodwork in mainstream corporate-sponsored media, as well as the agencies hiding the Clinton criminal history. He exposed a long history of corruption, blackmail, and murder for the lust of power and wealth. He was the wild card the banksters could not control. I still, and this is Gilliland speaking, I still would like to see a council of grandmothers running the country, people chosen because of their history of service and spiritual adeptness. Right now, for the house cleaning process, Trump is the guy. We need to support him and hold his feet to the fire, making sure he continues to give the New World Order a major black eye. He also offers another thought, a bit of an uncommon thought for those who are new to alternative news. He states that what you don't know is Trump is already acting as president under the new republic, and he is restoring our God-given rights. Our Constitution, which became toilet paper with the old regime, the United States Corporation Incorporated, a now defunct corporation. He is working arduously on releasing the World Restoration Funds, debt relief, and the new debt-free Treasury notes backed by gold. He is putting his and his family's life on the line, bringing in the new currency, which was tried by Lincoln, John Kennedy, and Reagan, and look what happened to them. Luckily, he has the generals behind him, the highest law of the land. They are going to ensure the republic is restored. Meanwhile, the brain-dead, ignorant, and uninformed masses are attacking their savior, that Gilliland calls them. And he continues, sound familiar? Are we a nation of brain-dead zombies being led by the Queen Zombie herself? Are we suffering from the Stockholm Syndrome, worshipping and serving the very captors who have enslaved us through debt, manufactured lack, creating an extreme, uneven dispersal of wealth? It is sure looking that way, writes Gilliland. For those who voted for Hillary, just because she was a woman, Gilliland offers that if you want the woman's voice to be heard, support a woman of integrity, a strong heart, and one who truly loves humanity. They have presented themselves such as Jill Stein and others, yet they were virtually ignored by the media. On her Way of Love blog, Nancy Detweiler reposted an article from a source known to many as Zap, and Zap shares that there are many random acts of kindness that Trump has allegedly done that have never been given attention, and he names a few. Does this make him a saint? Of course not. He gives credit to Melania, Trump's wife, who speaks 5 languages and is quite intelligent. We do not know exactly what the president-elect thinks. On a bigger picture level, we are not sure how far he is willing to go, if at all, in going after the corruption and cabal interests that infest Washington. A few years ago, Donald Trump was trying very hard to expose Obama as not having been born in the U.S. Obama got even with Trump at an annual White House Correspondents' Dinner in 2011. Maybe Obama paid Trump a compliment without even knowing it. If Trump acts as president the way Obama describes him in this clip, maybe Trump could actually come in and clean out the White House.
Donald Trump is here tonight. all kidding aside, obviously we all know about your credentials and breadth of experience. For example, no, seriously, just recently in an episode of Celebrity Apprentice at the steakhouse, the men's cooking team did not impress the judges from Omaha Steaks. And there was a lot of blame to go around, but you, Mr. Trump, recognized that the real problem was a lack of leadership. And so ultimately you didn't blame Little John or Meatloaf. You fired Gary Busey. And these are the kind of decisions that would keep me up at night. Well handled, sir.
As mentioned, there are both positive and not so positive signs, and thus it becomes very important to observe actions and not just pay attention to words that were uttered during the heat of an election campaign. On a bigger picture level, there appears to be a very important role that Donald Trump is playing, regardless of how long he serves as president-elect or even as president. Yes, you did hear me correctly. I hinted at a possibility that even more dramatic things could unfold between now and January, when the swearing-in ceremony will happen, that could impact the results that we have witnessed from this election. I am not saying that I agree with things that Trump has said. There are certain things that he is alleged to have done. The vast majority of humans, in their youth and as part of their awakening, have come to learn who they are in the midst of who they are not. I personally have a few friends whom I was certain would not make very good parents based on how they acted when they were younger. I am eating my words today, in at least a few cases, because in the right situation, with the right partner, they begin to find their way and shine. Even my father, who graduated to the afterlife 16 years ago, was very outgoing, a bit of a partier and socializer when he was younger. Some described him even as being a part of the life of a party. I never knew him this way, however. It seems that once the full weight of being married hit him, it was like a switch had flipped, and he suddenly buried himself in his responsibility, a practice that would eventually lead to the separation of my parents while I was early in high school. The point I'm trying to make is this. Some people act out, and some say and write things that obviously are not life-honoring when they are younger. This is the product of the society that has been created, that we have now consented to live in. Suddenly, when put into positions of responsibility, some people change and begin to embrace the responsibility in a way that they never did before, perhaps both positively and negatively. Perhaps it was one's destiny to change in that moment. Some will say that they have not consented to a Trump presidency. Some would say that they did not consent to a Clinton presidency, had she won. We can look at all the verbal diarrhea that was put out during the campaign from both sides. At the end of the day, both candidates, regardless of how one feels about each candidate, gave the indication that it is now time to heal divisions, however painful they may be, and move forward. Insanity is doing the same thing repeatedly while expecting a different result. Trump was elected because it seems many agree with this. Trump, however, has his own connections to elitist circles, so it remains to be seen if he is merely another chess piece in the cabal game, because the cabal is known for playing both sides of wars and elections. What is not clear, however, is how badly the elitists may have misjudged this outcome. It appears that they miscalculated very badly. One has to look no further than the mainstream media and how nearly every Western media source, at least in the beginning, was very pro-Clinton. Trump represented the seething undercurrent of anger, rejection, betrayal, and denial that is buried deep within the American psychology. Clinton tried to keep it hidden while serving the status quo. Those energies are no longer being supported as the Earth goes through very intense energetic changes at this time. Trump called it what it is, and in doing so, upset a huge portion of the population because he exposed the buried racism and negativity that lies within the American psychology that no one wants to acknowledge, because they have been too conditioned and brainwashed to rally behind a flag, an anthem, and false narrative that the U.S. is the best country in the world, when it has already been exposed to the rest of the world as no longer being the case. And now that reality is starting to hit home with mainstream Americans. Looking at it spiritually and energetically, it comes down to this. Trump was mirroring back to a certain part of the population energies that people were obviously feeling, but they were vehemently denying that they existed. No one wants to be called a racist, and few want to consider themselves racists or whatever else. For humanity to move forward, however, it is time that all energies of negativity get named so that they can be brought out into the open and into the light for healing. The vast majority of those protesting Trump's comments are very likely reacting to a part of themselves that has been revealed, but they do not want to like or admit to. Anytime one reacts negatively to another, it is usually because it relates to something having been revealed about someone that the individual is too afraid to acknowledge. Pascal Emmanuel Gobry, writing for TheWeek.com on November 10th, noted how the U.S. now resembles Rome before the fall of the Republic. Gobry writes that the common belief until the American founding was that democracy was destined to fail. A political system that promises formal equality can't bear the strain of a system that will always have inequalities of status, however or regardless of how you try to legitimize them. In a true democracy, demagogues will win over the people with fatuous promises and showy acrobatics and accrue enough power to destroy the very democracy that is the source of their power. The reason why they believe this was because that's exactly what happened with Rome. Hence the saying, a republic, if you can keep it. Rome was divided into two primary, but arguably three classes. The patricians, who represented the aristocracy, the plebeians, or plebs, representing the financially insecure middle class, and then there was the slave labor class, although they were not very active politically. Gobry makes this comment about the Roman political system at the time. As is well known, Rome was run by a senate, but the senate was actually made up of patricians. To oversimplify, the senate was like a legislative branch, which nominated the consuls who ran the executive. Did the plebeians not have a voice? The plebeians were represented by elected officials called tribunes, whose main power was the ability to propose legislation and to veto the Senate. The plebeians were most often wealthy patricians themselves, since it was the only way to be active in politics, but they were patricians with the common touch, and good tribunes, like good politicians, knew how to appeal to their constituencies. What Gobry states is that the U.S. people rejected a patrician in Hillary Clinton and instead elected a tribune in the form of Donald Trump. Although there is truth that we can look back in history for lessons on how we are living today, it is also important to note that there are energies present today that were not present that we know of back then. The energies are similar because they are bringing about the collapse of something that no longer has meaning and purpose. But it is still different because of so many parallel events and shifts that are both directly and indirectly tied to this one election event, but are also affected by this one election event. So, with all the negativity finished from the election, it is now time to focus on as much positivity as possible. Clinton, perhaps to her credit, stated in her concession speech that the results are going to hurt for a while, but Trump has earned the right to be given his fair shot at leadership. For those who are interested, an article appearing on the National Public Radio website on November 9th will appear in the show summary, and this article outlines what Trump wants to do in his first 100 days in office. Whether he is able to do some of the things he is claiming to want to do, however, remains to be seen. This may or may not mean anything to some listeners, but I will offer it anyway. Two friends whom I have known personally for over 4 years have both received messages from their higher guides, and the message they both got was similar to my feeling about this election. All three of us share a feeling that Trump will not be president for a long time, and it is even possible that he will not be sworn in come January. Although they both also admit that there will be short-term chaos, and perhaps this is what we are experiencing right now with the riots and protests breaking out in the U.S., they and we are all also firmly aware that the future will be very bright. Trump's role was to prevent Clinton from coming into power. Trump fulfilled his role in imploding and exposing all the corruption within the Republican Party. Now that both parties have been exposed and the election itself has been manifested, the energies can begin moving in other directions to allow the next few dominoes to fall that can allow other geopolitical and geoeconomic changes to manifest for the highest good of all. The election campaign was for exposing all the deep-rooted negativity, and this has now been exposed. It is time to get on with the process of support and healing for the highest good of humanity and the planet, and this goes far above any one leader of any one country, and it is a call that must go to the heart of each individual, for it is together, as David Icke said, that we must co-create the kind of world we are saying we want. Whatever you are feeling, positive or negative, do your best to just be with it and allow it. Know that this too shall pass. Regardless of the results, the consciousness level of humanity and the vibration of the planet continues to rise. If it turns out that Trump's vision is not in alignment with the shift in human and planetary consciousness at this time, you can be very sure that it will not survive much longer. Trump's win will have served its purpose in preventing Clinton from winning, but then it will be time to introduce an even higher vision for change, and it is a change that cannot be stopped any longer. Due to the length of this particular story, I am choosing to post the transcript of it in the show summary along with all the links. In financial news, as I hinted at near the beginning of this week's newscast, there was some financial fallout from the election, although it surprised financial pundits by not having a long-lasting effect. It seems that the media just can't seem to get anything right these days. An article appearing on the Alan B. West website on November 10th commented on Paul Krugman from the New York Times, who felt that the economy would tank permanently under a Trump election win. According to the article by Matt Palumbo, with a Nobel Prize in the subject, you'd expect the New York Times' Paul Krugman to know his stuff when it comes to economics. While the stock market officially closes at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, in the middle of the night, as election returns rolled in, the futures market was alive and hectic. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was down an astounding 800 points when a Trump presidency started looking certain. It was a decline in the market from which we may never recover, predicted Krugman that night. Palumbo continues, if by never Krugman meant within the next 8 hours, he would have been right. By the time the markets opened, all the major indices recovered nearly all their overnight losses. And as we reported yesterday, the Dow Jones closed just a fraction of a % off its all-time high. Not being a financial expert, I might interpret this to mean that the world is more confident with Trump in a leadership role than they are with Clinton. The Western pundits proudly claim that the markets don't like uncertainty, but it seems the markets proved them wrong. There may be at least one reason for this, and it is connected to an article from Fortune.com by Chris Matthews posted on August 18th. In this article, one of Trump's economic advisors, a woman, Dr. Judy Shelton. Shelton is a senior fellow and co-director of the Atlas Sound Money Project, whose mission is to promote the principles of sound money and raise awareness of what they see as the inherent problems of our current monetary system. Dr. Shelton first rose to prominence when she predicted the economic collapse of the Soviet Union in 1989, 2 years before it transpired. When asked about her position that the U.S. should go back to a gold standard for its currency, she was quoted as saying that, in terms of gold being involved, some people may think of that as a throwback, but I see it as a sophisticated, forward-looking approach because gold is neutral and it's universal. It's a well-accepted monetary surrogate that transcends borders and time. If this practice starts to spread to even more countries, you would start to see the semblance of a future stable exchange rate system, with those exchange rates being determined by what market forces believe about the future value of those currencies. Although she is careful to say that her feelings are not an official policy of the Trump campaign, it is potentially advantageous that Trump has, as an advisor, one who understands the benefits of and supports a gold-backed currency and its future on the geoeconomic front. There has been speculation that, contained within the Paris Agreement for Climate Change, were the foundations for what is alleged to be the new financial paradigm, and it is believed that this paradigm would include a global movement towards gold or metals or resources-backed currencies, while leading to the removal of the debt-based financial system and the US dollar as the global reserve currency. An article by Jason Hickel, appearing on the London Guardian website on November 5th, appears to be hinting at this as well. According to the article, when it comes to global warming, we know that the real problem is not just fossil fuels. It is the logic of endless growth that is built into our economic system. Rapid climate change is the most obvious symptom of this contradiction, but we're also seeing it in the form of deforestation, desertification, and mass extinction, with species dying at an alarming rate as our consumption of the natural world causes their habitats to collapse. It was unthinkable to say this even 10 years ago, but today, as we become increasingly aware of these crises, it seems all too clear. Our economic system is incompatible with life on this planet. Hickel poses the question and then continues. How can we redesign the global economy to bring it in line with the principles of ecology? The most obvious answer is to stop using the gross domestic product, or GDP, to measure economic progress and replace it with a more thoughtful measure, one that accounts for the ecological and social impact of economic activity. Prominent economists like Nobel Prize winner Joseph Stiglitz have been calling for such changes for years, and it's time we listened. Replacing the GDP is a short-term solution, but Hickel also ventures into another area that has been speculated upon in some circles. Hickel writes that, while it might help refocus economic policies on what really matters, it doesn't address the main driver of growth, debt. Debt is the real reason the economy has to grow in the first place. Because debt always comes with interest, it grows exponentially. So, if a person, a business, or a country wants to pay down debt over the long term, they have to grow enough to at least match the growth of their debt. Without growth, debt piles up and eventually triggers an economic crisis. One way to relieve the pressure for endless growth might be to cancel some of the debt, a kind of debt jubilee, but this would only provide a short-term fix. It would not get to the real root of the problem, that the global economic system runs on money that is, itself, debt. Hickel then comes to the point he really seems to want to make, writing that, but there's an even more exciting solution we might consider. We could abolish debt-based currency altogether and invent a new money system completely free of intrinsic debt. Instead of letting commercial banks create money by lending it into existence, we could have the state create money and then spend it into existence. New money would get pumped into the real economy instead of just going straight into financial speculation, where it inflates huge asset bubbles that only benefit the mega rich. The responsibility for money creation would be placed with an independent agency that, unlike our banks, would be democratic, accountable, and transparent, so money would become a truly public good. Commercial banks would still be able to lend money at interest, but they would have to back it dollar for dollar with their own reserves. In other words, there would be a 100% reserve requirement. Hickel adds that abolishing debt-based currency also holds the secret to getting our system off its addiction to growth, and therefore to arresting climate change. As it turns out, reinventing our money system is crucial to our survival in the Anthropocene, at least as important as getting off fossil fuels. And this idea is already beginning to gain traction. In the UK, the campaigning group Positive Money has generated momentum around it, building on a series of excellent explanatory videos. The idea has its enemies, of course, Hickel notes. If we shift to a positive money system, big banks will no longer have the power to literally make money out of nothing, and the rich will no longer reap millions from asset bubbles. Unsurprisingly, neither of these groups would be pleased by this prospect, but if we want to build a fairer, more ecologically sound economy, that's a battle that we can't be afraid to fight. Positive Money, that Hickel mentioned moments ago, is a not-for-profit organization based in London that has been around since at least 2012, and according to its website, is a movement for a fair, democratic, and sustainable money system. Their advisory panel includes economics professors, authors, entrepreneurs, and people from the financial industry who know that something needs to change.
Positive Money is trying to achieve and raise the awareness of where money comes from, who creates it, who controls it. And I think they're doing a fantastic job in that respect. Some of their publications, the information on the website is very easy to understand and shines a light on a very important area.
One of the big things we've been doing is getting ordinary people to understand this. So a lot of people think that economics is too complicated and there's too much jargon. We try and take the jargon out of it to make it accessible. So some of the people that are interested in what we're doing, and some of our supporters range from 16-year-old school students right through to 85-year-old retired engineers who are interested in why is there so much debt, why is there so much instability in the economy, why does the cost of living seem to get higher and higher.
So Positive Money has really always been about its supporters. They've been the ones that have allowed the organisation to grow, whether that's been organising events, telling their friends and family about Positive Money, or donating to us each month. Positive Money really is its supporters.
Basically, we want to remove the power to create money away from banks and give it to the transparent, accountable public body that would work for public interest.
We think this is a big problem, and we think that actually the power to create money shouldn't be privately owned, money shouldn't be created as debt. I think that actually the power to create money should be returned to the people, essentially.
What really struck me about Positive Money is how easy it is to get involved with the campaign, and that Positive Money are calling for a real and significant change to the way that the monetary system works in the UK.
So I've been to a conference where I was surrounded by a number of people from different constituencies, including people from working in UK banks and banks from overseas, also people from the environmental movement, people from the left of the political spectrum and from the right. This whole coalition of people all speaking about the same issue that's important to them and all uniting around this issue.
They look and dissect where money comes from, make it simple to understand. I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I'm still involved with Positive Money.
So we're hoping that in 5 years we can get to the point where people have a much better understanding of what is actually wrong with the banking system as it is today, and that instead of talking about, how do we tweak the current banking system to make it work slightly better than it does today, we can actually have a talk about how to fundamentally reform it so that we have a stable banking system, a stable economy, much lower debt, much lower inequality.
In the long term, we want hundreds and thousands of people involved in the movement, both nationally and internationally. We want so many people involved that it's impossible for people with the power to make change to avoid the question, why can't we have a money system that serves people and planet?
The people of the world are indeed now becoming more informed about the current dysfunctional and destructive financial paradigm, and are becoming aware that there are other options that can serve people and the planet. Included in the show summary will be videos and links to videos that can explain what money is. Another focuses on the inequality gap that is rising. A third explains why there is so much debt. And several other videos will be available also that may be beneficial for beginners to start learning about this dysfunctional financial system that must now evolve. Gold appears to be very active, at least gold on paper, that is, in the wake of the U.S. election. Several articles have appeared via the King World News website. On November the 11th, one article on the website offered information from Andrew Maguire, who reported some allegedly shocking news. According to this article, in the aftermath of a brutal takedown in the gold and silver markets, today whistleblower and London metals trader Andrew Maguire told King World News that the paper gold market traded a jaw-dropping 6,800 tons of gold in just one day. Maguire was quoted as saying the following: "Just to illustrate how ludicrous the paper markets have become, during the U.S. election, daily session and total swap of the COMEX open interest constituted a staggering 2,268 tons of paper gold. This volume does not include the unallocated paper-centric over-the-counter markets, where volume exceeded the COMEX by a factor of more than 2 times. Now brace yourself. In total, this conservatively places the swap of paper gold positions at a ludicrous 6,800 tons. That's unprecedented. The record daily volume totals more than 2 years of annual global gold production or total annual mining supply." So it appears, if the information is accurate, that a significant financial event took place on the day of the U.S. election. The information so far does not seem to indicate the time of day when these transactions were done, whether it was before Trump won the election or during the evening when it appeared that Trump could potentially win. A King World News article from the day before reported on gold, and they shared the following: "As consumers, we are used to pricing gold's goods in dollars, or whichever currency a country uses. However, using the dollar as a benchmark is less than ideal because it has lost more than 95% of its value over the last 100 years. In fact, most of the rise in prices over the last century can be attributed to a loss in purchasing power of the dollar. Austrian economists take a different and better approach to measuring purchasing power, and they use gold. After 1971, the growth in fiat money has outpaced the growth in gold production. As a result, gold has protected investors in the long term against the loss of purchasing power caused by persistent money supply inflation. Rather than looking at higher gold prices as a gain in the precious metals value, they should be seen as a consequence of monetary inflation. Even though the gold price in US dollar terms is currently not yet in the vicinity of its all-time high, the data are clear. The price of gold in terms of the dollar has increased by a factor of 34 times since 1971. In the long term, the gold price is rising against every paper currency. At least 2 articles from the same website had indicated back in October that the price of gold was expected to rise significantly and arguably even more as countries embrace the new emerging financial paradigm and abandon the current collapsing paradigm based on paper debts and a worthless US dollar as a global reserve currency. Links will be in the show summary, and there may be more news to follow on this subject next week. In general news, one topic that was not mentioned a lot by the mainstream media during their election coverage was the other big winner in the election, and it was cannabis. Numerous states were also voting on whether or not to legalize marijuana in the U.S. election. According to a Zero Hedge article on November 10th, the 2016 U.S. election shocked everyone. But while the results did not look like anything pundits and pollsters predicted, American voters stayed mostly consistent on at least one subject: marijuana. Prohibitive anti-marijuana laws across the country suffered a major setback on November 8th when voters in California, Massachusetts, Maine, and Nevada approved the legalization of recreational cannabis. Arizona, however, wasn't as pro-freedom, as just over 52% of Grand Canyon state voters said no to Proposition 205. A powerful lobby backed the opposition in that state. In Florida, Arkansas, Montana, and North Dakota, voters passed medical marijuana laws, allowing patients suffering from certain medical conditions to have access to cannabis. Before the election, 25 states already had marijuana or medical marijuana laws on the books. The article notes that the full list of states that have medical marijuana laws on the books now include Alaska, Arizona, California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New Mexico, New York, Ohio, Oregon, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, Washington, and Washington, D.C. As well, the people seem to recognize that the use of this plant does not represent any greater danger than other, more dangerous drugs. The article reports that, according to the executive director of Marijuana Policy Project, Rob Campia, the overall positive outcome shows most voters do not think otherwise law-abiding citizens should be criminalized for using a product that is much safer than alcohol. Instead of going after individuals for their marijuana use, Campia added, there is a more general consensus that law enforcement should be using taxpayer-backed resources to fight more serious crimes instead. So the movement continues in the states, and perhaps eventually politicians and lawmakers will stop wasting time, resources, and taxpayer money criminalizing something that has the potential to help humanity and the planet in so many ways. Because remember, cannabis and hemp have multiple positive benefits, and it is not just the marijuana component. On November 3rd, the Times of India reported on an astral event that was detected by scientists in that country. In the article, it was reported that the world's largest and most sensitive cosmic ray monitor, located in India, has recorded a burst of galactic cosmic rays that indicates a crack in the Earth's magnetic shield, according to scientists. The burst occurred when a giant cloud of plasma ejected from the solar corona and struck Earth at a very high speed, causing massive compression of the Earth's magnetosphere and triggering a severe geomagnetic storm. The article adds that the burst occurred when a giant cloud of plasma ejected from the corona and moving with a speed of about 2.5 million kilometers per hour struck our planet, causing the compression from 11 to 4 times the radius of Earth. Earth's magnetosphere extends over a radius of 1 million kilometers, which acts as the first line of defense, shielding us from the continuous flow of solar and galactic cosmic rays, thus protecting life on our planet from these high-intensity energetic radiations. Or protecting us, so they say. To most people, the news may not seem that significant. To those who are more energetically aware and sensitive, the news may mean much more. Meg Benedicte commented on the event in a blog posting that appeared on her website on November 6th. According to Benedicte, the energy is amping in intensity in the planetary collective as polarized forces are battling for control. We see examples of this battle playing out in the US election and the UK's Brexit vote. The opposing parties and their followers are rigidly entrenched in righteous indignation. Neither side has humanity's best interest in mind. As the battle escalates, the new Earthers, as she calls them, are receiving divine intervention in galactic support. Benedicte then explains the event that the scientists in India observed and that the Times of India reported on. Benedicte continues, "The 1111 Stargate has opened a portal in Earth's astral plane, streaming powerful gamma photonic rays into the collective field. During rare ascension gateways, the dimensional veil is the thinnest and spiritual rituals become more effective. In the coming week, take advantage of the 1111 gateway to enhance your visions, intentions, invocations, and manifestations while the veils come down. As a conscious light being, you have the ability to affect how the future unfolds. You are providing the feedback influencing your projected manifestations. Some of these possible futures have more magnetism than others. It does require continued focus on your end result. Otherwise, if left to chance, lower energies can throw a wrench in your plans. This is not the time to wait on the sidelines for the world to improve. All light bearers are being called to get involved and actively create the new earth. You are the guardians of the new earth." She explains that those souls that have a soul-level memory of going through a previous ascension-related process will be drawn to pursue it here on earth because it is familiar. There are also those here who do not have such a memory, and thus they do not feel nor do they understand such a calling because they have nothing to remember. Benedicte writes that the light bearers are present on earth to demonstrate the ascension process to humanity and awaken the ancient knowledge into the collective mind. CVN has reported on the human and planetary shift towards a fifth-dimensional reality. It is merely a vibrational change of state, very similar to the change of water from liquid to a vapor when the right vibration has been achieved through heating. Benedicte explains that the fifth-dimensional field pulses at 25 Hz and higher, beyond the reach of ego mentality. Any polarized density or ego resistance will drop your frequency below the fifth-dimensional range. Keep your eye on the goal. Dump the density. Release the polarized charge. Let go of all emotional dependencies. It's like peeling the onion. Drop the outer layers clinging to the past. Move into living in the now, free from the limits of time, all past karma, and traumatized timelines. For those who have the memory, it will be up to us to continue to anchor these energies, for we are showing the way for those who do not have such a memory and are here to learn and experience with those who are here to guide humanity through this experience. Those who are lashing out in anger and violence at this time may be doing so because they truly do not understand the bigger picture unfolding right now, or rather, they may be lashing out because the rising consciousness vibrations are beginning to affect people of a certain vibration, and it could be causing people to lose control of their mind and sanity. We cannot change, nor can we heal others. We can only continue to be, to the very best of our abilities in every moment, the example, the support, the compassion, and the anchor to which others will look in trying to understand all that is happening at this time. Over to tech-related news now. Since the first announcements started coming out about the existence of a high-speed transportation system called the Hyperloop, the idea seems to be rapidly expanding. Before I continue, there is a thought to keep in mind, and those who are more awake and aware will likely know this already. It has been alleged that the global cabal has, historically, been in possession of technologies that are at least 70 to 100 years ahead of what has currently been made public. Although technologies like the Hyperloop represent a significant advancement to the minds of those who do not know this, there are already technologies that far exceed the Hyperloop, technologies that are as advanced as starships and as basic as bilocation devices, where Hyperloop technologies will not be needed because people will be able to bilocate from one location to another. For now, however, this technology represents a push in making people aware of new technologies that can plant seeds for even bigger shifts to come. Until now, the Hyperloop appears to have been focusing on a single route between one city and another. It seems that there are people and organizations based in Dubai, people with deep pockets that are seeking to expand the concept. An article on the RT website on November 10th reported that a high-speed Hyperloop system to transport passengers to their destination at speeds greater than a passenger jet may have found its first home in the United Arab Emirates. Hyperloop One, a company working to bring the futuristic transport mode a reality, has signed an agreement with the Dubai Roads and Transport Authority to explore potential routes in the oil-rich nation. The article continues, the Futurama-like people carrier received widespread attention in 2013 when Elon Musk put forward his ideas for the new ground transport system that would see specially designed capsules carry passengers on a cushion of air through a network of tubes at about 760 miles per hour or about 1,223 kilometers per hour. The proposed route from Dubai to Abu Dhabi could see travelers making the normally 2-hour trip in under 12 minutes. What is a bit different about this particular project is that it apparently will be a network of transportation. The article writes that a video forecast for the enormous and complex network reveals the project would be split between self-driving cars, dubbed hyperpods, and a long-haul coach traveling through a pneumatic tunnel. A feasibility study is currently underway as the United Arab Emirates government moves towards making 25% of all public transport driverless. RT had reported last May the first successful test by Hyperloop in its first ever propulsion open-air test in the Las Vegas desert along a half-mile track. The concept video, released on November 8th by Hyperloop, is now on YouTube, and the video will be in the show summary for those interested in learning more. In another story that may bring potential benefit for the Hyperloop projects and more, it is being reported that, allegedly, for the first time, researchers have achieved superconductivity, the phenomenon of electrical conductivity with zero resistance, in a material that's not a superconductor. The article by Fiona MacDonald, appearing on the Science Alert website on November 1st, reported that the new technique demonstrates a concept that was first proposed back in the 1970s, but until now had never been proven, and it could lead to ways to make existing superconductors, like the ones used in MRI machines or magnetic levitation trains, cheaper and more efficient at higher temperatures. Superconductive materials could revolutionize a whole range of other industries if they were more commercially viable. Not only can superconductors be used to build super-fast, frictionless transport systems like maglev trains and the Hyperloop, they could also make our electricity grids a whole lot more efficient. MacDonald then adds that right now, the materials we use to transmit electricity from power plants to our homes lose as much as 10% of the energy along the journey. But superconductors wouldn't lose any electricity at all, so utility companies could provide us with more power without needing to generate any more electricity. What's holding back all of these applications is that commercial superconductors materials need to be cooled down to around minus 269.1 degrees Celsius in order to achieve zero electrical resistance, which is incredibly expensive and energy intensive. The challenge and the opportunity, according to McDonald, is that if researchers can find out a way to make regular materials superconductive, it would open up new ways to make superconductive materials work at even higher temperatures. And now the University of Houston, a team from the University of Houston, has taken that first step by inducing superconductivity at the point where two phases of a material meet, known as the interface. They achieved this in calcium iron arsenide, a material that's non-superconductive. The process currently works at colder temperatures, and experiments are continuing to see if it can work at higher temperatures. The article positions this technology as still being a long time before it can be used commercially. However, what I believe this represents, as I mentioned in the last story, it represents a leaking of information in the form of new technologies that are designed to softly prepare the world for greater advancements that are going to be flooding the global consciousness sooner rather than later. Like the Hyperloop, first introduced in 2013 and already has several projects planned for construction, this technology and others like it will begin expanding rapidly as those seeking positive global change continue to make ideas and information available as freely as possible. Finally, in health-related news, there are multiple reasons why people are having difficulties sleeping at this time, or who are feeling fatigue, even during waking hours. The reasons are very likely as unique to that individual as the individual is him or herself. Those who are more awake and energy sensitive may be feeling solar flare energies or energies of another sort, including energies put off by other humans, both positive and negative. Those who are not yet awake may be feeling all of the stresses of a 3D reality that is beginning to implode, and they may not be understanding why all these geopolitical events seem to be happening now. Others are just simply too stressed, trying to find a job, or pay the bills, or support a family. There may be yet another option for people to try to see if it is something that may work for them. An article appearing on the IndigenousPeoples.com website offers the following. Irregular sleeping patterns, or even insomnia, can stem from several different things like depression, stress, and anxiety. Certain medications also cause insomnia. Pain medications, antihistamines, and heart and blood pressure medicines are among the many that contribute to sleep loss. Yes, some meds might actually make you drowsy at first, but they can also trigger frequent bathroom trips or anxiety, which can further disturb your rest. Whether it's one of these issues, or maybe it's that you are addicted to your phone when you should be sleeping, something needs to change. The article suggests trying banana tea. According to the article, bananas, especially the peels, are loaded with potassium and magnesium. While magnesium helps prevent sleep disturbances, both magnesium and potassium work together to help relax muscles. In fact, magnesium is one of the best minerals for relaxation. Keep in mind, this recipe calls for 100% organic bananas. Bananas that are not organic are loaded with harmful pesticides, and since we encourage you to eat the boiled peel, it must be chemical-free. This tea takes less than 10 minutes to prepare and can be enjoyed every night before bed. The recipe is simple. Take one organic banana, cut off both ends, peel the banana, and then place both the fruit and the peel into the boiling water for 10 minutes. Eating the boiled banana and peels with a bit of cinnamon can help increase the effects of the tea. It sounds simple, and perhaps it even sounds good. Most people have been conditioned to going for the sleeping pills. According to the article, sleeping pills cannot help you long term. They provide a short-term fix. The majority of sleeping pills are a specific type of drug that induces and maintains sleep. They're classified as something called sedative hypnotics. Among other sedative hypnotic drugs are benzodiazepines and barbiturates. Benzodiazepines, like Xanax and Valium, can be addictive and are used to treat anxiety disorders by increasing drowsiness. Barbiturates depress the central nervous system and are used as anesthetics and sedatives. As with all drugs, there's a list of side effects that accompany sleeping pills. Aside from the likeliness of them being habit-forming, they can cause the following: constipation, dizziness, difficulty focusing and remembering, stomach pain, weakness, uncontrollable shaking, and also parasomnias, which means doing things without realizing it. Sleeping pills also cause your breathing rhythm to slow down and significantly lighten. This means that if you're already suffering from lung diseases like COPD or even asthma, these meds can be dangerous and even fatal. The vast majority of people in the Western world are, to varying degrees, sleep deprived. The article writes that cognitive function, your long and short-term memory, is seriously affected. Processing even the simplest things seems challenging, and your emotional responses to things become totally skewed. The scariest part is that sleep deprivation has been linked to serious health problems, including obesity, diabetes, and cancer. Now, the article says that the body needs 8 hours of sleep. Although this may feel true for most people, and perhaps it is true for many people, it is my personal belief that the amount of sleep one needs is relative to how one is choosing to live one's life. If one has established a strong meditative program, for example, it is possible that one may not need as much sleep. If another has established a multiphasic sleep pattern, meaning 2 or 3 separate sleeping phases of 2 to 3 hours each, it is possible that they will not require as much sleep. The fast-paced lifestyle, combined with the toxins our bodies are forced to take in, combined with being bombarded by Wi-Fi signals, cell phone signals, and other electronic radiation, also has an extremely negative impact upon our physical bodies. A second option to consider may be found in an article posted on the Minds.com website on October 31st. According to this article, there is now a completely legal way to enjoy the benefits of CBD in a refreshing drink. CBD is cannabidiol, which is a component of cannabis. Relax by Religion is made from 100% organic hemp milk that contains CBD oil. It claims to help soothe anxiety, relieves pain, stress, and also helps as a sleep aid. As well as CBD oil, Relax contains hemp seeds, cashews, dates, coconut oil, vanilla, and water. The product is the brainchild of Michael Isted, a psychotherapist and development consultant for Religion, who decided the world needed a drink that contains all the benefits of CBD. CBD doesn't have any psychoactive properties, so it won't get you high, but it will supply you with all the goodness of its source, hemp. The article adds that you don't need to get high from CBD oil to feel the benefits of its properties. CBD oil reacts with the body's endogenous cannabinoid system, which controls the body's homeostasis, which has a positive effect on your mood, sleep, pain, immune response, and hormone regulation. A third possible way to help your body is to have a Faraday cage. According to the website How Stuff Works, electricity is the lifeblood of many aspects of our world. Without volts and amps, many of our technological innovations would cease to exist. Even our bodies wouldn't function without an electrical charge zipping through our cells. But what electricity gives, electricity can take away. Although this form of energy is vital to so much of our lives, it is one of those things that are only good in the right amounts. Too much electricity can electrocute people. Likewise, it can kill our modern electronics and machines. Michael Faraday, the brilliant 19th century scientist, and one of his namesake inventions, the Faraday cage, was designed to help control electricity and make it safer for our computers, cars, and other inventions, and for us too. Faraday cages shield their contents from static electric fields. An electric field is a force field surrounding a charged particle, such as an electron or proton. Electromagnetic radiation is all around us. It can be found in the visible light and also the ultraviolet light, in the microwaves that cook our food, and even in the FM and AM radio waves that pump music through our radios. But sometimes this radiation is undesirable and downright disruptive. That's where the Faraday cage comes in. As a Faraday cage distributes that charge or radiation around the cage's exterior, it cancels out electric charges or radiation within the cage's interior. In short, a Faraday cage is a hollow conductor in which the charge remains on the external surface of the cage. Sleeping within a Faraday cage may be enough to help one sleep better, or perhaps help those who are sensitive to electricity and electronic radiation. Several other links with information about Faraday cages will appear along with the banana tea recipe in the show summary for this story. In this week's final words, I would like to close this week with a speech that was given by Chris Hedges at a Jill Stein political rally for the U.S. Green Party in Philadelphia recently. Chris Hedges has been credited with saying, among other things, that we now live in a nation, referring to the U.S., where doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the media destroy information, religion destroys morals, and our banks destroy the economy. In this speech, Hedges comments on the importance of people who are able and willing to stand up to oppression without surrendering their morals and ethics. They are the foundation that will support the awakening people of the world at this time. As you listen to his words calling for people to resist, I gently remind listeners that resistance does not necessarily have to be in the form of physical, violent revolution, as we are now witnessing in the U.S., although there is always a chance that it may. However, if enough people begin their resistance in their own ways, refusing vaccinations, educating and empowering children to think for themselves, and critically question, while respecting and honoring others and our planet, informing local politicians that you and others are becoming more informed, the corruption within politics, banking, the legal system, education, healthcare, and more. If we become aware of all of this, then perhaps the violent revolution will not be necessary, because more people will have united under the power of being informed and empowered to push for holistic global peace and healing. Create a wonderful week. Until our next moment of now, I leave you with Chris Hedges speaking on November 8th in Philadelphia on Defying the Politics of Fear.
No social or revolutionary movement succeeds without a core of people who will not betray their vision and their principles. They are the building blocks of social change. They are our only hope for a viable socialism. They are willing to spend their lives, if they have to, as political outcasts. They are willing to endure repression, and they will not sell out the oppressed and the poor. They know that you stand with all of the oppressed. You stand with all of the oppressed, or you stand with none of the oppressed. They know that when you fight for the oppressed, you get treated like the oppressed. They know this is the cost of the moral life, a life that is not abandoned even if it means you are destined to spend generations wandering in the wilderness, even if you are destined to fail. I was in East Germany, Czechoslovakia, and Romania in 1989 during the revolutions, or in the case of Romania, perhaps an inter-party putsch. These revolutions were spontaneous outbursts by an enraged population that had had enough of communist repression, mismanagement, and corruption. No one, from the dissidents themselves to the ruling Communist Party elites, anticipated these revolts. They erupted as all revolutions do, from the tinder that had been waiting years for a spark. These revolutions were led by a handful of dissidents who, until the fall of 1989, were marginal and dismissed by the state until it was too late as inconsequential. The state periodically sent security to harass them. It often ignored them. I'm not even sure you could call these dissidents an opposition. They were profoundly isolated within their own societies. The state media denied them a voice. They had no legal status and were locked out of the political arena. They were blacklisted. They struggled to make a living. But when the breaking point in Eastern Europe came, when the ruling communist ideology lost all credibility, there was no question in the minds of the public about whom they could trust. The demonstrators that poured into the streets of East Berlin and Prague were well aware of who would sell them out and who would not. They trusted those such as Václav Havel, who had dedicated their lives to fighting for an open society, those who had been willing to be condemned as non-persons and go to jail for their defiance, those who stood for something that no one at that time saw as either practical or possible. Our only chance to overthrow corporate power comes from those who will not surrender to it, who will hold fast to the causes of the oppressed, no matter what the price, who are willing to be dismissed and even reviled by a bankrupt liberal establishment, who have found within themselves the courage to say no, to refuse to cooperate. The most important issue in this election does not revolve around the personal traits of Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump. It revolves around the destructive dynamic of unfettered and unregulated global capitalism, the crimes of imperialism, and the security and surveillance apparatus. It is up to us to resist. We must refuse to be complicit, even in the act of voting, with the fossil fuel industry's savaging of our ecosystem, endless war, oppression of the poor, including the 1 in 5 children in this country who are hungry, the evisceration of constitutional rights and civil liberties, the cruel and inhumane system of mass incarceration, and the state-sponsored executions of unarmed people of color in our cities. Julian Bender reminded us that we can serve 2 sets of principles: privilege and power, or justice and truth. The more we make compromises with those who serve privilege and power, the more we diminish the capacity for justice and truth. Our strength comes from our steadfastness to justice and truth, a steadfastness that accepts that the corporate forces arrayed against us may crush us, but that the more we make compromises with those whose ends are privilege and power, the more
we diminish our capacity
to effect change. We must build structures of open defiance to the corporate state. It may take as long as a decade for us to effectively confront corporate power. Every action we take, every word we utter, must make it clear that we refuse to participate in our own enslavement and our own destruction. Our success will be determined not by the number of votes we get in this or any election, but by our ability to stand unequivocally with the oppressed. Resistance to corporate power will require fortitude and ability to march to the beat of our own drum. If we succeed succeed, we will be met with harsher and harsher forms of state repression and vitriolic attacks from the mass media. No revolutionary abandons, no matter what the cost, those he or she defends. If we betray them, we betray ourselves. We cannot betray the ideal of a popular democracy by pretending this contrived political theater is free or fair or democratic. We cannot play their game. We cannot play by their rules. Our job is not to accommodate the corporate state. Our job is to destroy it. The state seeks to control us through fear, propaganda, wholesale surveillance, and violence. These are the only forms of social control it has left. The lie of neoliberalism has been exposed. Its credibility has imploded. The moment we cease being afraid, the moment we use our collective strength, as I saw in Eastern Europe in 1989, to make the rulers afraid of us, is the moment of the system's downfall. Courage is contagious. Revolutions begin, as I saw in East Germany, with a few Lutheran clergy holding candles as they march through the streets of Leipzig. It ends with 500,000 people protesting in East Berlin, the defection of the police and the army to the side of the protesters, and the collapse of the Stasi state. But revolutions only happen when a few dissidents decide they will no longer cooperate. When they affirm what we must affirm. When, as Paul said, they choose to live in truth. We may not succeed, so be it. At least those who come after us, and I speak as a father, will say of us, they tried. The corporate forces that have us in their death grip will destroy our lives. They will destroy the lives of my children. They will destroy the lives of your children. They will destroy the ecosystem that makes life possible. We owe it to those who come after us not to be complicit in this evil.
So that is a sample of the unfolding higher consciousness news around the world this week. Cosmic Vision News is broadcast weekly from the CosmicVisionNews.com website. Links to stories used in this broadcast are published in the show summary, which is available on the website. CVN can be followed through its Facebook and Minds.com page, the YouTube channel, as well as on Twitter, Google+, and LinkedIn. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I'm Jeffrey West, reminding you that courage is staying in step with one's higher vision and service to humanity and the planet, while the elitists and cabal members are marching to the wrong tune. Until our next moment of now, stay grounded in love, hold the vision of light and peace in your hearts, and keep your eyes to the skies. Disclosure is unfolding all around you. Namaste.